It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to it, your feel-good breakfast show, Expresso, live on SABC3. At the start of a brand new week, we thank you for choosing to start with us. Thank you so much for that. Now, here's a question. What's it like to be a woman in Cape Town? It's a good question, right? So journalist, author and founder of Women's Zone, Nancy Richards, and co-author Carol du Toit, they decided to search out and find art in their book, Being a Woman in Cape Town. They shared the stories of 13 phenomenal and inspirational women from the mother city. And this year, at the virtual Artscape Humanity Arts Festival, the art of storytelling will really come to life in a live half-hour webinar where Nancy's book will be featured. And she joins us this morning via video call to tell us all about this. Nancy Richards, good morning. Thank you so much for making the time to chat to us.
It's a pleasure. Hi, Toby. So nice to see you.
It's so nice to see you. Nancy, I mean, this is really such an important question you're asking. What's it like being a woman in Cape Town? But what was the inspiration behind the book, Being a Woman in Cape Town?
Well, yeah, you might well ask what it's like to be a woman in Cape Town. The experience is so different for so many women. And I suppose that it wasn't so much the inspiration behind the book. The book was a result of that inspiration. One of the questions we asked at Women's Zone is, you know, what is it like to be a woman in Cape Town? And we all make assumptions about each other. We all think, oh, well, that's that woman and she does this and she does that. But, you know, if you sit down and you listen to a woman tell her story, then you really get to know her. You can empathize with her, you can understand her. So we thought we'd put our money where our mouths were. And over a period of a year, we went to 13 different communities in and around Cape Town. And we listened to a woman in each one of those communities tell her story. And because we could, we recorded her telling it. So at the end of the year, we had all these stories and we thought, well, what are we going to do with them now? It'd be nice to get them to other people. So we thought, you know what, we'll transcribe them. That's what Carol did. And we'll put them together in a book and voila, you know, here it is.
Realized.
So it was an organic journey, if you like.
I love this, and I'm guessing that, of course, in your search, you did discover that of all those 13 women, their stories were different in their form. But how did you then decide on the stories to tell, and how did you decide which authors to include in this project?
Well, they weren't authors. They were, so many of them said, but I'm not a writer. I'm not a storyteller. I'm just an ordinary woman, which is so much what being a woman is all about. It's just me, you know. But once they were persuaded to tell their stories, to answer your question properly, what we did was we cast the net wide. We sent out forms to everybody and said, tell us about a woman who has inspired you. She doesn't have to be rich and famous and a celebrity. She just needs to be a woman that's really inspired you, who you think, you know, oh, gee, I really like this woman. And so that was how we got women from all over. And we narrowed down the field so that we went to Mannenberg, we went to Woodstock, we went to Muizenberg, we went to Kailicha. We tried to get a real cross-section of Cape Town's kaleidoscope because it is very different for women depending on where they live. So we went to each one of those communities and we narrowed it down. We were going to have 12 women because there's one woman for every month. But then one of our people, Philippa Kabali-Kagwa, who is a storyteller, she said, no, you can't have 12. You've got to have 13 because 12 is a patriarchal number. So we went with 13 women. So the women chose themselves, if you like, and their stories. And if I can tell you, Tabitha, one thing about listening to a woman tell her story is that while you're listening to her, you're sort of rolling your own story. You're thinking, how would I have reacted? What was I doing at that age? How would that have been for me? So you can really bond with that woman just by listening to her story. It's a real gift to say to a woman, tell me your story.
I love the beauty of just listening to a woman telling their story, and certainly in my own experience, I find that you build such a deep connection with the person and you really see them beyond what you see, beyond what's at face value. And I love that you've been able to do this and capture this in the way that you've done with your book. But the webinar is coming up, and that's something to look forward to. Of course, it's the Artscape Women's Humanity Arts Festival. How can the public join this webinar, and what can people expect?
Well, the webinar is as a result of the Women's Humanity Arts Festival this year being virtual. At Woman's Zone, we have a little women's library at Artscape where we get together and women tell stories and book launches and panel discussions and all that sort of thing, which obviously we haven't been able to do. So we thought, okay, you know what, let's do a series of podcasts. So we chose a number of women authors who have told their stories one way or another in their books, and we podcast that series. So as a result of that, the Cape Times said they would like to do a webinar to talk a little bit about what it's like to tell your story. So they've chosen three of us, because I'm included because of our book. The other storytellers, if you like, people who are telling their stories through their books, is Colleen Higgs. Colleen Higgs is actually, she's really important because she also has a women's publishing company called Majaji, and she's written her own book called My Mother, My Madness, which is a very, very personal story that she has told. So she talks about how she came to write that very personal story. And the other storyteller, if you like, is Portia Mbao. Portia would be well known to foodies. Portia is the owner of the Africa Cafe in Heritage Square in Cape Town. And together with her daughter, she's put together this mother and father of a book called the Africa Cookbook, in which she hasn't told, well, she has a little bit told her story, but she tells her story through food. And I suppose every woman has a different way of telling her story. I mean, at the Artscape Humanity Festival, we have poets, there are performers, singing and dancing. So every woman tells her story in a different way. And what we've tried to do at the Arts Festival is encapsulate all that. What we've done with the webinar is just focus on three women and just have a very informal chat about why and how they've told their stories. So, you know, and I think important about our book, The Woman Being a Woman in Cape Town book, is that in it, there's a chapter on how to tell your own story. And I think that's what's important. If anybody is listening and thinking, what about my story? What about your story? Tell your story.
I love this. Nancy, this is so beautiful, and I think that your explanation of what to expect at the festival really just makes, it does highlight how rich it will be, and there's something for everyone, truly. But also, thank you very, very much for making sure that you give a platform to all of those women who've been a part of your book to tell their stories so that people can connect with those, and we all can identify the similarities that we share with each other as people, but also just for the women as women themselves. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks.
We wish Nancy Richards, of course, every bit of success with that Women's Stories at Artscape Humanity Arts Festival webinar, which is happening this Wednesday. Here's, right now, though, another inspiring story of a woman who's the only female in her management role at the national organization where she works, and we're so excited to celebrate her. You're going to love this woman. Check this out.